Our closing conversation is leading us in the future of equity-centric philanthropy and systemic transformation. To kick us off, please join me in welcoming NSLA board member Lucretia Cade.
Oh, wasn't supposed to do that. Good morning. How's everybody doing today? Y'all having a good time? Yeah, the conference has been amazing. I said we really stepped up our game for y'all. So, my name's Lucretia Cade, and I'm a member of the board of the National Summer Learning Association. I'm also the president of Atlanta Life Insurance Company, and I have just recently stepped into this role. I'm only about 10 weeks in, and I spent half of the last 10th week with you all. Leading, the last remaining historically Black-owned insurance company. And for those of you that don't know the story of Atlanta Life was started by Alonzo Herndon, who was born a slave. He was emancipated at age 5 and eventually became a sharecropper. And he made his way to Atlanta, where he became a barber with a barbershop that he himself could not even sit in to be serviced because it was a whites-only barbershop. But he did something smart. He started listening to what his white patrons were saying about their real estate investments and their stock investments and what they were doing, and he started to mimic them. And he became a real estate investor, and he eventually bought an insurance company and became the first Black millionaire in the state of Georgia in the early 1900s. And so Atlanta Life exists to create pathways to help underserved communities to be prepared, to stay protected, and to build a legacy. That is what Alonzo Herndon set out to do, and it's what I set out every day to continue to do. And to me, this mission is not unlike what we all do here as part of the summer learning community. We all recognize that summer and after-school opportunities outside that traditional classroom are the places and spaces where legacies are born, where leaders are made, and yes, where a little Black girl from the east side of Atlanta in Decatur, Georgia, born to teenage parents, dared to imagine that she could one day lead a 116-year-old insurance company and be here with you to tell the story. My teenage mother was fiercely committed to education, and she was committed to me being well-rounded and to staying busy, because as she likes to say, idle hands are the devil's workshop. And so early on, my summers were always filled with new experiences, where each year I expanded and built on my view and perspective of the world. One of the most memorable summers I had was spent at an academic program at Spelman College. There, I met other brown girls who looked like me, who didn't come from much, but were looking to create a pathway of success. And I was able to literally absorb the power of that historically Black institution for women as a constant reminder of what could be. And that is what summer is all about. It's about what can be. The last 18 months have been extremely challenging, to say the least. The pandemic put the world on pause and forced us to deeply examine our societal systems, our democracy, and our response to meeting the most basic human needs, as well as the ecosystem of support for millions of young people. Without a doubt, philanthropy helps us to respond to these increasingly complex needs of those that we serve. Flexible funding helps us to innovate in a nimble way, which is critically important during these challenging times. Philanthropic organizations are also instrumental in keeping organizations focused on those core audiences, those core missions, and to make sure that we all focus on what the data-driven outcomes are telling us. Philanthropic organizations help shape improvement and reform efforts at the local, state, and federal level. So in this conversation this morning, we're going to delve into the future of equity-centric philanthropy and the role that philanthropy plays in advancing systemic, lasting change in education and in all societal systems. And so I would like you to join me in welcoming, before we have our panel come up, a very special guest today, an education giant, Mr. Geoffrey Canada. Apparently you all know him. You're already friends. So I will make this quick. Mr. Canada is the president of the National Board of the Harlem Children's Zone, which the New York Times calls one of the most ambitious social policy experiments of our time. World-renowned for his pioneering work helping children and families in Harlem, and as a thought leader and passionate advocate for education reform. Mr. Canada was named to the Time 100 list of most influential people in the world, and in 2014 as one of Fortune's 50 greatest leaders in the world. He's devoted his life's work to helping children who, like himself, grew up in poor, distressed neighborhoods. Under Geoffrey's visionary leadership, Harvard Children's Zone became a national model of place-based innovation and the subject of significant media attention. Mr. Canada and his Harlem Children's Zone have been featured in the documentary, Waiting for Superman, as well as on 60 Minutes, The Oprah Winfrey Show, Anderson Cooper, The Wall Street Journal, Forbes, and many other prominent news outlets. In 2008, Houghton Mifflin Harcourt published Whatever It Takes by Paul Tough, a detailed look at the work of Mr. Canada and Harlem Children's Zone. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to the distinguished Mr. Geoffrey Canada.
Wow. So thank you so much. This is pretty interesting. You know, I used to do a fair amount of speaking to groups, but it's been a couple of years. You all look great, by the way. I want to just say that. I'm so happy to know, real people exist out there. It's not Zoom. Okay. I do have to say one thing, though. I've gotten a bunch of honors. It's sort of, to me, wonderful for the reason that education, youth development work, that anybody thinks it's serious is important to me because I'm hoping it'll bring more serious people in. But I usually don't pay much attention to the honors and stuff. I did with the Fortune magazine piece because in Fortune, they had me ranked as the 12th most influential person in the world, right? So, no, but I got a bunch of those magazines. I took them home to my wife. She's a Harlem girl. I've been trying to impress this woman for 30 years, right? I said to her, honey, look, page 27. So she looks at it and she says, couldn't break into the top 10, huh? There's more I gotta do. That's all I'm saying. So this is sad because I'm looking at this room and you all are young. It's not sad that you all are young. It's sad that I realize I have been running summer programs longer than most of you have been alive. It's true, at least 38 years. Starting in the early 80s. And I spent some time this morning with Secretary Cardona, and he was talking about the need to open schools I said, Mr. Secretary, I started working on that in like 83 and 84, all right? I've been around a long time. This issue, though, to me, is more critical today than at any time in my history. I've been at the business over 45 years. I've gone through every education and youth development crisis that this country has faced in that time. Nothing comes close to what we're dealing with today. Nothing. And I've been trying to go out and say to people, this thing is a crisis and we need to treat it like a crisis. We can't just go back to business as usual like things are going to be fine. Everybody wants to open up the schools, things are going to be fine. No, they're not. No, they're not. The kids weren't fine when everything before COVID was happening. Why would we think they're going to be fine now? There has been a lot of money that has come into education, youth development. If we're not smart, it will be one of the biggest wastes of resources that we've ever seen. If we're not smart. And so part of what I want to say to you all is that this is a moment that we've got to take serious action. Now, you know, I've been in the business a long time. When I was creating the Harlem Children's Zone, there were people who were talking about this idea of place and going into a place. And I went there because a bunch of folks from all over the country, they were there, they were talking. And after about a year, I said, I wonder how long they're going to talk about this thing. I think I better go out and do something. So 4 years later, they were still talking about it, and I had created the Harlem Children's Zone. But let me tell you what happened in that 4 years. I made all the mistakes and fixed them while people were still drawing up the perfect plan on the board, right? So I'm sitting there saying, anybody who works in the communities we work in, there is no perfect plan. I don't care what plan you have, the moment you go out and deal with real life, you're gonna have to make adjustments. Part of the challenge is we gotta get out there and get the work done, and then we've gotta be prepared when things don't work, and they often do not work, to fix it. You mentioned Paul Tufts' book, Whatever It Takes. You know, if you look at that book, Paul has a special acknowledgement he puts in the book to me because the worst academic and professional day of my life, I asked Paul to come in and chronicle in that book because we were supposed to open up our high school and our middle school wasn't doing well. And I just said, the city has enough lousy high schools. I'm not going to open another one. But I had promised those families that if they came into my school, they would stay with me until college. And I had to go tell those parents that I wasn't going to be able to keep that promise. That our school, that those kids who were going to supposed to go in high school, we were going to delay opening our school for a year. And I was in tears, and the parents were in tears. It was really a horrible day for me. And so Paul says, who on their worst professional day would call a reporter, say, come on, I want you to watch this. But let me tell you why I did. I did it because I knew I was going to adjust. I was going to fix the problems. And I was going to end up eliminating the black-white achievement gap in my schools, which we have done. And people would look at it years later and think, that must have been kind of easy, right? Or it must have been easy for Jeff. Or there must have been something about what Jeff. In this work, you work really hard, and sometimes things don't work. And part of the message is, and we have to fix that. Then we fix it. And we don't give up, and you don't sort of say, I'm not going to do this. This is a moment right now that we have to do what Dr. King suggested. You know, it's never a bad time to quote Dr. King, right? But he said, we are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. It's where we are. We've got to make summer experiences for young people part of the permanent sort of structure of our young people's lives. It can't be happening, it can't be happening incidentally. It can't be happening because someone is so courageous they take on. This has to be done, and not just for a summer or two. What I have been telling folks, they don't want to hear it. They say, so what about, learning loss? My schools, we had a board meeting. I'm the chairman of our board. We had one of our principals come in and say, my fourth graders, when we went remote, some of the kids didn't come in even when we went hybrid. So that fourth grader didn't finish fourth grade because we stopped in March, missed all of fifth grade, and now is coming to us as a sixth grader. You know what now look, we taught our kids. We had 8-hour days for our kids throughout the whole, even on Zoom, they were coming in at 8 o'clock, staying until 4. We had live instruction. One of the few places in the country was doing live instruction with kids. Do you know what that means for most kids in America who are poor, who already are in schools that are failing? For you to have missed a year and a half of instruction? Now, how are we going to make that up? If we support children every summer for 10 years, we'll put a big dent in that. This is not getting back to business as usual. This is not something that's going to, you're going to fix this in a year. It doesn't work like that. This is going to take really a concentrated effort. So I'm excited to be here with you. This is a continuing part of a journey that I've been on for a long time. I feel like the troops are in the house now, and I'm not alone in doing this work. And we have more work to be done. I want to say that there are a lot of people who have worked really, really hard for us to have the opportunity we have today. And I just want to give one particular shout out to Marion Wright Edelman, who the head of the Children's Defense Fund. Marion focused on freedom schools in the summer and trained a bunch of folks so that but she knew, as we all do, that lots of places, all the summer melt, all of the challenges, all the lack of good, serious youth development is missing in communities, and it's our job to fix that. So that's why we're here today, and I'm going to take my seat and join a great panel. Thank you all very much.
All right, so that is a good preview of what is to come. And so now it is my pleasure to welcome Fatima Shama, the new head of Diversity and Inclusion Americas at Bloomberg, and also one of the newest board members of the National Summer Learning Association. In her new role, she will be developing the organization's strategic response to racial and social justice, this moment that we're in here in the U.S. and throughout the region. And so we are excited to have her. Prior to joining Bloomberg, Fatima most recently served as the executive director of the Fresh Air Fund, which I know we're all familiar with. And she's got, this resume is amazing. She also served in Mayor Bloomberg's administration as the commissioner of New York City Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs from 2009 through 2013. So you just heard from Jeff. You're about to hear from Fatima and the rest of the panel who introduced themselves. And I hope you all will take away these great nuggets of wisdom and insight and help figure out how to go make some more legacies. Fatima?
Hi, everybody. I do want to say, the music makes me want to dance a little. It might just be because we're all physically here. I don't know. It's lovely to be here. I will say one of the things that's most important, I think, in my resume is that I am the product of, I was born and raised in the Bronx to immigrant parents, but I am the product of out-of-school time programs that fundamentally exposed me to things that I never saw on my street. Right? Told me I could be something that everybody was telling me I couldn't be, and helped me use my time more wisely in the summer when all sorts of funny things can happen with a young, mischievous girl from the Bronx. The boogie down, might I add. Hence, I want to dance. And so I have had a career that has allowed me to ensure that I never forget, A, where I am from, or my responsibility to ensure not just where I have been able to go, but where I must ensure that other young people in the neighborhoods I have lived in and have worked for can go too. And so I'm honored to be a part of the National Summer Learning Association. And in this incredible reality, I now have the chance to serve on the boards of 2 foundations in New York City. I serve as the board chair of the New York Foundation, where we fund organizing and advocacy, specifically in communities, and am a trustee of the Pinkerton Foundation, which funds youth services and out-of-school time programs. And so I am among an incredible group of colleagues who are going to help us figure out how we all get the money we need to truly do what Jeff has said, which is not miss the mark on this moment. And so I'm going to invite my colleagues to introduce themselves. Chris, I'm going to start with you, and then we'll go to Gigi, and then Phil will end with you, and then we're going to have a conversation. And so thanks for having us, and Chris, I hand it to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Fatima. Good morning, everyone. It's a real honor to be with you all and to share the stage with such accomplished professionals. My name is Chris Caruso. I'm the managing director for school-age children at Robin Hood, which is a New York City-based foundation focused to eradicating poverty in New York City. And when Aaron asked me to be on this panel of philanthropists, it was a little striking to me because I'm brand new to philanthropy. I joined 6 months ago. I've really spent my career at the intersection of where schools and communities come together, fighting to bring more equity to New York City and creating more learning opportunities, both after school and during the summer in the public and nonprofit sectors. And I'm really impressed that all of the philanthropists on the panel here have all deep experience leading community-based organizations, which I think is really critical for philanthropy.
Hello, my name is Gigi Antoni, and I work at the Wallace Foundation. I have the honor of being the director of the unit at the Wallace Foundation that focuses on youth development. I've been there about 4 years, but prior to that, I was sitting in this audience running an intermediary out-of-school time organization in Dallas, Texas, and learned a lot from NSLA and from many of the people on this panel as well. So I'm very honored to be here today. The Wallace Foundation focuses on building knowledge in the field and helping communities find ways to make a dent in providing access and quality out-of-school time at scale to folks in their community. And so this is a moment in time that is very powerful. It's a moment for our field to come together with one voice and really push into this moment. So I'm glad to be here to talk about how philanthropy can help do that. Phil?
Good morning. It's a real pleasure to be with you all. My name is Phil Lee. I'm with the Robert Sterling Clarke Foundation in New York. We are place-based funders that are really focused on investing in people and knowing that people are doing the work, making a difference, and bringing change about in our city. And so we're really focused on creating a more vibrant and equitable New York. And we do that by investing in groups that fund leadership development. And so I think the big thing that we think about is that we talk about all these different subjects and issues as if they were standalone things, and that's not true at all, right? There's crossover and so much that influences and becomes part of what others are thinking about and doing. And so the whole idea behind so much of the leadership development is to help folks think more across issue, across sector, in terms of thinking about solutions that we can make and really addressing systemic change.
Thanks, Phil. So let's get this conversation started. I want to start with Chris because as Jeff just shared with us, right, this is a moment like no other. And what is happening for our young people in schools and how school districts are responding is critical. And you spent some good time at the New York City Department of Education overseeing our communities and schools programs, and now you're on the funding side. So when you think about what this moment means, the pressure it's putting on school districts, the pressure it's putting on individual schools in general, and the role that actually philanthropy probably needs to take to think about what does a collaborative investment look like, what do you say to us?
Yeah, thanks, Fatima. So prior to joining Robin Hood, I was at the New York City Department of Education for the past 6 years. And one of the things that I'm most proud about during that time is that during this last summer, Mayor de Blasio announced that this was the end of summer school as we knew it. This time that Jeff talked so eloquently about, this sense of urgency, we knew that we had to do things differently. And there's money, there's public money to do that. One of the things that I struggle with over my career, one of the things that I've seen from an equity lens, is that we don't offer choices to poor families, right? Affluent families have a choice between how their children spend their time, whether they're going to go to a camp like these beautiful pictures show, whether they're going to get tutoring on the side. All of their needs are going to be met because families have the means to knit those together. But in the schools that I supported, I saw these mandates for summer school that when you enrolled in summer school, it meant that you couldn't enroll in the summer camp or the summer program. So we were really taking away families' dignity by removing that choice from them. And so what I think school systems need to do is to start to blend those lines. And what role can philanthropy play in this? A couple of things. One, we can give public officials cover. We can raise ideas. We could support innovation. And we can convene and bring practitioners like you all, like we were, together with school systems. The fact is that the unfinished learning, the interrupted education that every student has experienced is going to be with us for some time. Jeff spoke about that this isn't new, right? These equity challenges, the gaps that we have existed beforehand. But the pressure that districts are going to be to make up that time, to make sure that kids get back on their reading levels and their math levels is going to be something that we need to work with them together and align our contributions, bring together the outcomes that we're seeking so that we can work in tandem. And so my hope is that summer school, as it's traditionally been defined, goes away. And in cities and in the low-income neighborhoods, we're able to offer more robust choices to families so that we can knit together the academic instruction with the experiential learning, with the joy that comes from developing and discovering your passions, so that every family has the dignity of choice.
So one of the things that you just said, joy. One of my favorite conversations with a funder, who will remain nameless, was when I was talking about the work we do at the Fresh Air Fund. And one of the most powerful things we do is ensure and see and witness joy. And I remember a funder saying to me, well, you can't measure joy. And so therefore, I'm not really sure how we can fund that. The Wallace Foundation does extraordinary work on capturing data and really capturing the research that happens in this work. And Gigi, it would be great to hear the leadership work that the Wallace Foundation is doing, but really on how do we use research from an asset-based perspective to recognize actually that there is a lever of reality in how summer programs make an impact, whether it's joy, whether it's learning, whether it's new experiences. It'd be great to hear some of the work that you're leading.
So, I was really struck by Geoffrey talking about the 37 or plus years of summer programs that you've experienced. And I've had a similar experience in my career, been at this for many, many decades. And what I have learned about data and what the Wallace Foundation has really invested in, we have a wealth of very high quality data about the impact of these kinds of programs on young people, and also what are the important components. That enrichment is an important component. Community partnerships are an important component. Bringing school personnel and blended staffing, providing choice, and interest-driven programming. We, long ago when generations would build cathedrals and the people who started the foundation weren't the people who finished the top of the cathedral. We are that. We are building a cathedral, and we have a lot of information and experience from the people who came before us to build on. And activating that data being familiar with it. And there are a lot of great organizations, including NSLA, where you can find, great synthesis of how to talk about the impact of this. Every single one of us in our own communities have an opportunity to be an advocate. And one of the things that needs to happen right now is that community providers need to lean in to school districts as best as possible to help them think about how the power of that partnership and what it can mean for the outcomes for kids. And that intersection between opportunity and interest and long and deep relationships with young people, that nexus between those three things is remarkably powerful. And you can find at the Alliance for After School great materials. NSLA has terrific materials to help you think about doing that. And the Wallace Foundation at our Knowledge Center, we have a lot of synthesis of research. Being familiar with that and using that. Also, choosing people in your community to make that case. So think about who the spokesperson is that you are placing forward to have that conversation with leaders in your community. But we can't just be providers. We have to be leaders at this point. We've got to lean in, and we've got to use all of that great data to help us talk about youth development, social-emotional learning, and academic achievement. We have plenty of evidence that the work that we do promotes both of those things.
You talked about leaders, right? And so we all know that the summer is an incredible time where young people not only benefit from being in programs, but actually being leaders in programs, right? We employ a huge sector of young people, and of course, that pipeline develops, hopefully, the future leaders of who come to end up running our organizations, right? And so, Phil, as a funder who commits to funding leadership development, how does the Robert Sterling Clarke Foundation look at the power of summer, investing in leadership, and why it's so important?
Well, I think you've kind of nailed it already, and I may not have too much to add, but it's really about letting young people and letting the people who are working with them all step into their leadership, right? Summer is a wonderful and amazing opportunity for folks to keep expanding and growing in their different dimensions and pushing different ways to do their work. And I think acknowledging that and knowing that, right, is such a key part of kind of growing that pipeline, if you will, right? The leaders just don't pop up, when you're like, oh, it's time for someone to be your successor or to lead in a different way. All these opportunities to be part of something and to learn yourself and experience it. And as Jeff was talking about, things that go right and things that don't go right, and how do you acknowledge that and correct it and move forward? All these are invaluable learning opportunities for young people, for the folks who are working with them. And what we're doing, right, is we're building the future. And all these things it's such a huge win-win for all of us by having the folks who are in our summer programs, the folks who are leading them. And so when there's the moment for new folks to step into roles, they are better equipped and hopefully thinking about the different ways in which they would want to change and to innovate. And I think that's the part of leadership development, is really encouraging and inviting people to step into their leadership. It's not like we're going to train them all these different things, but I think sometimes being acknowledged or tapped in and of itself is the biggest signifier of like what potential looks like, right? And the more many of us have, or the young people have, to realize like, oh, I have this opportunity and I have this chance to do that, the better we all are off. And so that's really kind of where the pipeline is that it's really kind of expanding and being more inclusive in terms of thinking about who and how we can do this work. And so our role as a funder is really to say invest in people, and that's our entire mantra, is like really investing in people, because they're the ones who are all doing this work, and if we don't do that, then we're not setting ourselves up for long-term success.
Yeah, thank you for that. So Jeff, you talked about a collective opportunity, right? This is a moment for us. Could you help help us understand how you think. This room of community-based partners, leaders in their own right, I want to make sure we all know we're advocates, right? Because in order to get this work done, we need to be unapologetically clear about for whom we work for and why. But we're sitting this row in a reality of folks who have the opportunity to give philanthropically. When you think about the responsibility philanthropy has, I would love for you to give us a little bit of a blueprint for how you think we all collectively need to really not lose this moment and actually, with all due respect to us, get ready to get pushed.
So thank you for that invitation. So there are a couple of things that I've learned in my career I think are important. For a lot of my career, I tried to convince funders that I really wasn't providing joy, right? I was doing something else. I was teaching math by using chess because they didn't want to fund a chess program, right? And so I created all of the rationales for why my kids needed chess. Now, I didn't ask these folks, how come you have your kids as part of a chess program? Because you didn't need any scientific research saying what, you know. So, but I felt like I had to do that for my kids, right? So, part of the challenge, I think that we're getting better about it, but that we've got to get clear. We actually know what kids need. Yeah. Because if we're upper middle class, we provide those things for our kids without scientific evidence. We want them to go to camp, right? We want them to learn how to swim. Look, if they're interested in tennis, we know that's only going to last 3 months. Let them play tennis, and they're going to quit. They're going to do something else, right? I mean, I'm talking like real parents. Like, this is what happens with kids. We're forced often into creating these things which we say this kid's going to have to come to the same thing, right, for the next 3 years. But that's not real. That's not how reality works, right? Kids change, things change. So one thing is, I think this idea of joy is something that philanthropists need to acknowledge because that's what allows kids to come back. You have either joy or coercion, right? I mean, otherwise they're not going to show up. And I don't have a lot of kids knocking on my door saying, I want more algebra. I just can't get enough of it. I mean, there were some strange kids. There were some. But most of my kids want to have a good time. Now, within having a good time, how do you do developmentally appropriate youth development strategies so these young people are learning, right? That's part of the deal. But don't make me have to justify why my young people enjoying themselves this summer is not worth supporting. So that's one thing that I want to say. The second thing is that for a lot of my career, I was forced into being the low bid, right? Meaning, I'm gonna provide this summer service for 100 kids for 200,000. Someone says I can do it for 150. I say I'll do it for 100. I can't really do it for 100, but it's the only way I'm gonna get the money. So after I get the grant, now I've got to struggle to try and figure out how to backfill. So we have taught not-for-profits not to talk about the real cost. Right? Don't talk about all your back office costs you got to pay for. Go out and say, you can't find this any cheaper than I can provide it. And I think as funders, we've got to go and discourage that kind of thinking. If you want quality in the programs that are working with the most disadvantaged, you're going to have to pay for that. It costs real money. At one point in my career, I got secure enough so I actually felt like I could tell folks the truth, right? But I'm being serious about what things really cost. And they're like, really, you're gonna, yes, that's what it actually cost me. If you wanna see me improve math grades, I've gotta get college-educated math folks, and they are not cheap. And so don't ask me to do that if you don't wanna pay for it, right? That this is part of what I think we have to have a more honest conversation between the not-for-profit field and the funders. So we quit this race to the bottom of folks sort of undercutting themselves and not able to deliver the results because they can't pay for it.
Are we ready? Are we all ready? So Phil, when we think about when you sit at the table with your foundation partners, presidents, your colleagues, this is real. And you know this because you ran a nonprofit. You know this. How do we get your colleagues and the industry to fundamentally understand that we actually are the experts and they should actually be investing in what we're asking for, not asking us to navigate? Like, how do you want our help in making sure we help change the dialogue on what is trusting of your grantees? What is trusting? What does that relationship with philanthropy need to look like? How can we help you? Or what do you want us to do?
Oh, you're speaking my language here. That is part of this sector, right? It is power and it's control, and it is asking or requiring or inviting philanthropy to think differently about how it partners, right? And it's interesting that the phrase is being used a lot, partnering, but is it really partnering or is it really telling, right?
That's right.
And I think that is the challenge, right? We are part of a movement at Robert Sterling Clarke called trust-based philanthropy, and many of you may have heard about it. And it's interesting, this moment in all the terrible things that have happened with the pandemics, plural, right? There was this thing called the COVID-19 Pledge that was put out last year, and it's on the Council of Foundations website, which 800 foundations nationally have signed on to, basically saying that they were going to relax some of the requirements or unrestrict funds and things of that nature. And that moment is now. And it's up to us to sort of say, hey, this one-year experiment that you all tried out, it wasn't so bad, was it? Really looking to, and we say, in this moment of all things, in this moment of trauma or uncertainty, we're going to unrestrict everything because we want you to do your work and you know how to do it better than us. And it's funny, in a moment like that, that trust comes out, where in all the other moments, we know better, right? Or funding knows, and that's not true, right? And so how do we take this moment that's being experienced by all these nonprofits and foundations and sort of like, let's make that permanent, right? And this is the time for us to all speak up, to think about, and sort of say, hey, what did we all learn, right? And it's almost inviting us to step in and help educate our funders, many of whom are already reverting back to the practices of the other day. And I know you live it and see it more than we do, right? But it's sort of like, how bad was it? Or like, how good was it that you unrestricted and we were able to serve and pivot and serve communities more quickly and respond and adapt because we know them better. You're sitting over here, Phil, right? We're on the front line. We know what we're seeing. And so those kinds of ways of really helping to shape, not tell, but really inform, like, think about all the great work that your organizations have done and how you worked in summer, how you worked with young people in a moment where everything else was falling apart. And I think that's the story that we need to tell and help philanthropy understand. We're ripe for the picking as a sector, and to sort of say, the lived experience, people who are working closer to the ground, we know, and trust. You know, there's like, people keep saying, how do we know that they'll use those resources right? I'm like, oh my goodness. If you're going to support an organization and you don't trust them, then you shouldn't fund them in the first place, right? And so I think we really have this moment where, in a weird thing, we have almost a perfect storm and the things are in place for us to really kind of push on that. And so I think that's what this moment involves.
This moment requires us to feel comfortable in not underselling ourselves and being clear about it. But actually, equity is at the core of that. So Chris, you talked about And Jeff, you just mentioned this, right? Somehow, the very people making decisions about the programs we're running, their own children participate in all sorts of awesomeness in the summer, and yet they question whether our young people should have access to those programs, or is that really the right thing? And because you know that so well, Chris, on the other, having been on the other side, you now sit in a position of real leadership, and might I say power, to shift that conversation. So how do you plan to do that, and how do we help you when we go back to our respective spaces, in the role modeling that Robin Hood is going to be able to basically unleash? And where is equity in ensuring summer funding should actually be trust-based and not opinion-based?
Yeah, thank you for that. It makes me think, I've told this story before. My wife was a third grade teacher in the Edenwald section in the Bronx. It's in the northern part of the Bronx, and she was a damn good teacher. So if you ever bump into her, make sure you tell her I said that. So third grade in New York State is the first year that kids take their standardized tests. This was before the pandemic, but the tests are coming back. And her students were ready. They had the phonemic awareness, they could decode, they were ready for that test. And they had to do a reading passage to test their comprehension. And the reading passage was about stained glass windows. And a child raised his hand during the test and was like, Miss Caruso, why is the stained glass window beautiful? A stain is dirty. I get in trouble when I come home and my pants are stained after playing in the playground. They didn't have the experience to know what a stained glass window was. It wasn't in the books they read. They didn't get to go walk through the Met Museum and see the beautiful stained glass windows there. Their church might have been a storefront church on the avenue. It was an experiential test, not a literacy test, right? And so when we talk about joy, when we talk about giving kids experiences and divorce it from academic excellence, from opportunity that rises down, we're doing ourselves a disservice. And so what can you all do is raise those stories. Tell the story of Joaquin and what his experiences are. Make sure that you're connecting with your superintendents and your principals so that they can better understand the links there. And as a foundation, I think some of our responsibility, we're looking at this in two ways. One is directly funding the nonprofits. So directly supporting the organizations to do the work, right? I thought Jeff was talking about us because we fund Harlem Children's Zone, but I'm hoping that was not us. But so we're directly funding the nonprofits, but we're also building capacity. So we're funding convenings, we're making sure that there are spaces where we have our superintendents and our intermediaries and our families and our nonprofits coming together to set a vision of what they want together. Right? And I think that's a unique space because the fact also is that our dollars are not as important this year than they were 2 years ago or than they will be because the public sector is flush with recovery funds, right? And so we have to find other ways to fill gaps, to think about the things that the public sector struggles to do, to give the unrestricted funding, and then to convene and kind of set priorities so that communities and the public sector have equal footing at the table.
Gigi, I want you to help us think about all of the flush money that's in our communities. And I have to tell you, sorry, my friends who are in the city of New York, that's just you, Chris, I'm looking at you. When all that money was flush in New York, recovery money, I remember calling colleagues and being like, so how do we get that?
Yeah.
How do we get that money? What do we need to do to get that money? And so Gigi, Wallace cares deeply about those types of partnerships and models. What do you want us to do? How can you help us? How can we help you? Because I think reverse mentorship is one of the most powerful things that we don't talk enough about, right? So in this way, how do you help us understand the power of that partnership? Government, community voices, community-based voices, but really, what are you interested in seeing? And what do we need? How does our communities help you help us?
So I think from our perspective, what we're most concerned about is that all of this money is going to hit our communities. It's going to be spent on business as usual, things that aren't working already. And that this vision of what is possible in summer, this vision of choice, of powerful relationships with adults and peers that are interest-based, that help kids find their passion and support their academic development, that is a blend of community, of experiences in the community, like going to the Met, and having new experiences in your own community, along with being supported by your schools and your academic achievement. This vision of what it could be is something that all the people in this room understand and are in a position to have a bias for action. Every community is ready to do something, and even if they're low on the continuum and have a long way to go to meet that vision, getting started of working in that direction, this is the moment. I don't know what we're waiting for. If it's not now, it is never. And so, having some. And then I'm going to talk about evidence again. I just want to share, I was listening to the very important point about the amount of money that you ask for to be able to do quality work. Access without quality is not equity. And so when you do more kids because you're at a lower price, what the result is that, kids have low quality experiences because they're not fully funded. So, there is an evidence-based tool online called the OST cost calculator. You can go in and show a funder or a public partner what it actually costs to do high-quality programs for kids. That isn't just your budget. It's actually based on national evidence of what it costs to get quality. Being a voice and working towards that is very, very important, and we have to lean in. What Wallace is thinking about in terms of doing this, we are incentivizing planning, long-term planning. The other thing we're concerned about is that this money is going to play out, and then there's going to be this huge cliff. And whatever innovations or progress that we've made as a field in this area can't be sustained going forward. So thinking about planning and insisting and incentivizing community planning, so districts working with their community, looking for the assets in their community to bring in to a sustainable plan to sustain young people using summer and out of school time, extending their learning, and blending community assets with our public assets in ways that benefit young people. We're also leaning into policy. The Department of Education has given the field opportunities to provide feedback about guidance. And that's something philanthropy can do. We can lean into that. We can share what we know and what we know from the field. So, those are the things that, professional development, professional learning, peer learning, technical assistance, funding community organizations to have the capacity to partner with a very flush school system. Right now, they have plenty of money to do this with. Our community partners don't. So they need to be they need to have resources to be able to engage. Partnering is expensive. Collaboration is expensive. It needs to be funded. So we are thinking about it in those ways and trying to think sort of nationally how we can support communities that want to come together and try to move the needle in a sustainable way with this money and with this moment.
Could we apply?
Excuse me?
Are there people in this room? Should we mobilize and apply?
Mobilize to apply, I'm sorry.
Wallace is
for technical assistance.
Yeah.
Actually, you can through your association with NSLA. So we're working with our national partners across the country to find communities that are open and ripe for that kind of long-term planning. And there'll be more of that coming around the bend soon.
So I'm a very proud fundraiser. So thank you.
Good job.
Yeah. So just note to all of you, a wonderful way to have spent your Wednesday morning was here and at the NSLA conference, because hopefully this might result in a boost in your budgets and planning for summer. Because actually, Jeff, I want you to have the last word on this, which is it's November, which is actually when we all are starting to plan, right? Like the fall's done. We've got winter programs already baked. Spring is on its way, but we're planning for summer. So when you think about what do we need to do when we walk out of here, and more importantly, you've said this before, you've been doing this for 30 plus years. This moment is different. And I actually want to ask you, when you think about where you want to see the space in 6 months, and then again next summer, like, what do you want to see, and where should we be thinking in terms of the short-term planning right now, and then, of course, our long-term planning?
So, I mean, part of what is so apparent to me is how we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yes.
Right? The out-of-school time cost calculator, my goodness, if I had had such a thing 15 years ago, right, that I could have used as evidence, like, no, this is just not me making up numbers. Look at what this thing really cost. I did make up the numbers. Look at what this thing really cost, though, for real, right? I mean, but in space after space after space, someone has done Wallace has done a lot of this research, by the way, to make the case about why this should be a significant investment. And it doesn't mean that we're running away from the evidence of what gets accomplished when you actually provide quality summer experiences. It's a way of talking about it so you translate that information, right, to other folks. I was telling to some folks how difficult it is to get kids from the city to understand metamorphosis if they've never witnessed out in nature, right, what happens when, butterflies are formed. Once you got it, you got it. It's like, oh, yeah, I saw that. You don't need to get tutored in it if you've experienced it. So the question is, how do we create intentional experiences for young people that we can then describe so folks understand that there's science behind what we're doing? And I would say, here's the challenge for this group. The money has gone to the schools. Now, I don't know how many of you work with schools. They never gave me any money, all right? So I'm just being serious now. So now they have a lot of money, and I'm worried they're going to be the worst funders that we've ever seen, right? And so what we need to do right now is start forming those relationships, figuring out, we have our own strategies of what we think we need to do. I will tell you, they are probably not the same sort of priorities in the schools that are going to have all this money. And if we don't start having those conversations right now so we can tailor our presentation so that it's understandable, I feel like folks are going to be like, no, thank you, I have the money, I don't need your services, I'm good. Right? And I just think we have to be intentional. You have to, this is going to sound terrible, I hope don't put this on YouTube. You have to think about this like cracking a safe. You got to figure out what's the right combination, because the money is there. There's enough money right now to fund any kind of out-of-school time that you could even imagine. The question is, what's the right messaging to allow us to be sort of attractive, understood by the folks who now have the money? And it is not, if we thought the foundations were tough, this is going to be a lot tougher if we don't form relationships. But I'm going to tell you this. This is about actually going in and forming the relationships with folks and having those conversations. And I just think we've got to do that. We've got to get the science. We've got to be able to present the science so that you're coming in with a clear, coherent plan, one that takes into account exactly what these schools have to spend, so you're not spending up all of their money, but a nice portion of it. That is part of what we have to start doing right now, so that when these schools start making decisions, right at the top of the heap is our presentation for out-of-school time, what we want to do this summer.
Are we ready? I think so. Please join me in thanking this extraordinary panel of brilliant colleagues doing incredible work.
And I think we're going to hear from Brodrick, Clarke, and Aaron Dworkin.
I'm in awe. I'm filled with so much gratitude at this moment. And just want to indulge and take just 2 minutes to express some gratitude. So sometimes your wings spread so wide, you can't see who is covering. Sometimes your wings spread so wide, you can't see who is covering. When I came into this space, I was a 22-year-old working at a nonprofit in New York City. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York. So you see New York is strong here without question. And my first job was in the South Bronx. And I ran into a brother by the name of Alfonso Wyatt. And what Alfonso used to do, Alfonso used to say, look, I need to bring you guys together. I need to bring all of you together. He would bring practitioners of the color together at the Fund for the City of New York. He would send us into the boardroom. It was the first time I actually sat in a leather chair and saw, all this beautifulness there. I would sit there, and he would constantly say, man, you got to go up to Harlem. You got to go up to Harlem. You got to go talk to this gentleman. You got to go see him speak, Brother Geoffrey Canada. I don't know if he took off. Is he still in the space? Did he take off? Either way, the words will get to him. The brother spoke to us in a way that I've never heard before. He spoke with a style of Harry Belafonte, reminded me of Richard Roundtree with his strength, Bill Duke. All of that came across. His words of inspiration carried me, and that was the first time I saw somebody who looked like me bless the microphone with all that intellectual vigor, emphasizing service without question. But I wasn't alone at that table. I sat across the table from a gentleman by the name of Sean Dove, runs the campaign for Black Male Achievement today. I looked to my right, and there's Greg Taylor, who's now running the NBA Foundation. We were all young, 22, 23, 24 at the time. None of us knew, but we had been inspired by this gentleman. And so sometimes you can't see how far your wings spread, and you can't see who is covering. So I just want to thank folks like Geoffrey Canada and all others who lift up folks of color in this space. We talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I know there's a lot of folks that are retiring and trying to figure out how am I going to find someone to fill that space. Well, I'm standing here as the Vice President of Program Systems and Quality because somebody like Alfonso and Geoffrey inspired me to be in this spot. And so I thank them for that. Thank you for unknowingly taking me under your wing, empowering me to be totally unapologetic about standing up for what's right and championing those efforts to make sure that families grow healthy and our most vulnerable children, youth, and families have the support they need to survive and thrive. Thank you so much for being here in person at this conference.
All right, thank you, Brodrick. We're going to wrap up right now in 1 second. I just want to do a few quick thank yous. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to our amazing panel. Can we give them a round of applause again? Thank you. We have so much to be proud of. I am really proud of everyone here. I would like to just give a special appreciation. We had all these people that made this look like somehow the Academy Awards of Summer Learning. And so Melva LaJoy and her team are of event planning staff. Thank you so much for everything you've done, Melva. Thank you to the NSLA staff, once again, and our board, and all the partners and presenters. We know what works. We know what works. We have a long track record. We have a lot of resources. We have the staff, we have the curriculum, we have evidence, we have data, we now have money. So what that puts us to a position is this coming summer and the summer after, I would call these are the summers of no excuses. We know what the challenges are right now, sitting here in November. We know it's going to be hard to find the staff we need. It's going to be hard to train them. It's going to be hard to get the food out. It's going to be hard to get the transportation and to get all the partners and the school partnerships. We know that right now. Nothing will sneak up on us. You in this room, you may not have all the answers to all those challenges, but what's cool about this conference and our association and our community is that collectively we do have all the answers. So whatever you can't figure out, call us. We will put you in touch with the person who has figured this out. That's our job. And I'll just say, you are not alone. Just remember that. Sometimes when we do this work, when you go back to your neighborhood, you go back to your community, you go back to your school, you're like, oh, I'm the only one who's really thinking about July, and I'm the only one, but you are not. And think about this room, think about this conference, know that there's so much power in all of us. You're not alone. And in education, as we know, we're very good at counting time for kids. We're always good at like, how many hours did they come, and how many days did they come, and how many years have they been in this program and this program. And that's okay, but what's better is actually making time count for kids. So we don't want to just count time. We want to make it really count for them. Make this time count. That's the opportunity we have together. We'll take that forward. Thank you for everyone for a wonderful conference. We're going to be with you side by side as we get ready for this year and next. Melva, bring us out.